Good evening. The Clackamas County Budget Committee will now reconvene. We are holding this meeting in person and virtually. If you've joined us via Zoom for this meeting and are interested in providing public comment, we will prompt you regarding how to do that when the time is right. I will now open public comment period to receive testimony related to the county budget. No testimony on any other topics will be taken at this time. We will begin with those appearing in person. Please state your name and area of residence. You will have 3 minutes to make your comments.
We will begin with Mr. John Mullen.
Welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the Budget Committee, for the record, John Mullen. I live in Oregon City. And for those of you who are new, you may not know that I was the director of the Clackamas County Social Services Division. I was involved in the creation of the organization and then was the director for 22 years. And I'm really proud of the legacy of the Social Services Division and the work that's been done. And I also want to commend my successor and the current staff and the community partners for the good work that the Social Services Division does. But I need to state that for tonight, I'm here totally on my own. This is my own testimony, and I am happy to have this opportunity. First of all, I was relieved to see that there were no cuts to the Social Services Division budget. I did pay attention to some of the other things in the budget, but this is the one that I paid the most attention to. To that point, though, I want to disagree a bit with with Administrator Gary Schmidt about his point that he made that there were no significant reductions in 23-24. I'd like to draw your attention to tab 14, page 9. And the following is stated. Funding from the now eliminated Oregon Project Independence and Volunteer Connection have been consolidated with this program to consolidate the programs and services. This statement is awkwardly written and inaccurate. Oregon Project Independence has not been eliminated, but the Volunteer Connection was eliminated, as well as the time-honored program, RSVP. A volunteer program was eliminated, staff was laid off, and the county did not find a new sponsor for the program. When I was directed, we created the construct of the Volunteer Connection, and the reason that I wanted to do that is I wanted to highlight opportunities for people to serve and to make a difference in the community. At one point, we had close to 2,000 volunteers back when. Now, I realize times have changed and there are different complexities to life, and volunteerism is harder than it might have been at one point in time. But nevertheless, I was really very pleased about the work that the Volunteer Connection did over time. So without that construct, the Volunteer Connection, the program doesn't have the same kind of visibility. The other programs are intact under the ADRC that were moved, but of course the RSVP and the Volunteer Connection has gone away. I see that I'm out of time. Could I?
Actually, John, you can continue. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. There are issues about the budget process and the changes in the elimination of the equity office and what will be revealed in the upcoming report from the Coalition of Communities of Color. But I'm not going to comment on that tonight. I am going to come back to the Board of County Commissioners meeting on the 20th when it will be on the agenda to adopt the budget. And I hope as you do your deliberation tomorrow and you have discussions that I hope you'll have some further discussion about the courthouse obligations and ongoing sustainability of the county budget. If I understand correctly, what was presented today from the Sheriff's Department is that there'll be a request for additional staff for the courthouse, and that will come up in a supplemental budget. I also know that there's a disagreement between the county and Oregon City about the traffic patterns that will emerge because of the new courthouse. So I guess I would say that I am concerned and worried over time that we're going to have costs that are unanticipated about the courthouse and that the county will be on the hook for doing that. I do want to say that I testified last year, and to be clear about it, I have no concerns about a courthouse being built. There's definitely was a need for the courthouse. As I mentioned in my testimony last year, this very building where the Social Services Division moved in, when that happened, not a single program was eliminated, not a single staff person was cut. I understand that deals are structured differently, but I'm concerned about how that happened and the ongoing obligation of at least $15 million for the next 30 years. So I'll be back when I'm 103 at the end of that cycle to see how things have gone. But for that, I really do also want to say thank you to all of you, the citizens as well as the Board of County Commissioners sitting in as a budget committee, as well as the good work of staff. These are important and complex issues, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to express my opinion, and thank you for the time.
Thank you, John. Appreciate you being here.
Can I ask John a question?
Yes.
John, you mentioned at one time that the Volunteer Connection had 2,000 volunteers. What do you think that number of volunteers was a couple of years ago when the program was still in play?
I don't have that information right here and right now, but the number of volunteers declined significantly. One of the last actions that I did before I retired was that I had asked the volunteer coordinator coordinating the Volunteer Connection to make a special outreach to baby boomers, people like me, about engaging back and giving back to their community. That volunteer coordinator retired, and I think that message got lost over a period of time. So I think that it requires new effort to get volunteers to come forward and do the work, because as I mentioned, people are busy, times have changed, all of that is taken into consideration. But I think really one of the things that was most concerning to me about losing that visibility is that the county commission could, on an ongoing basis, say to people, government can't do everything and doesn't do everything, but you can step forward if you see issues and problems that you want to work on. So that organizing principle was lost. But to your point, I don't have an exact number, and I'm sure that could be supplied by the Social Services Division.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner West?
Yeah, I want to talk to you about the Volunteer Connections also. Do you have any, what do you think caused less engagement in the program? 2,000 is quite a lot of people engaging, which is fantastic, and I think that's important for a healthy community. But I'm curious, like, what you saw after you left as it kind of, those numbers dwindled. What do you think contributed to that?
There was an elimination of a number of RSVP volunteers that were inactive or less active, rather than perhaps approaching the people that were less active and saying, would you like a different kind of assignment? Would you like to do some other kind of work? So the volunteers did everything from Meals on Wheels to working in the libraries to working at some of the county's historic sites, as well as providing services in-house in social services. So I think that with a different view, a different perspective, I think things might have been better. Now, it's easy for me to say that when I was president, I was the director, these were the things that worked really well. I do want to acknowledge that times have changed. I do feel a little let down by people of my own age cohort that are not stepping forward and doing volunteer work. I do volunteer work myself, and I always encourage people to do so. But I think I think there really needs to be sort of a bully pulpit, if you will, around the need for volunteers. And I think the county commission could do that. I understand there was a really lovely volunteer recognition that just happened. And I think that has been on hold for a number of years due to the pandemic and other reasons. So I think when you show support for volunteers and when you go out and speak to communities and say, we need your help, I think that can be really very inspiring to people.
I'm super curious about the dialogue with this going forward, because I talked about, I think I've talked to this with Commissioner Schrader. We have talked about this behind the scenes too. As we see our homelessness numbers go down, that's fantastic. And as we see very chronic and persistent problems I've never seen in my lifetime, you know, I'm from here, this area, and you've been here for many, many years. I don't know if you're from Oregon, but we're seeing, you know, just a real epidemic with human despair, drug addiction, fentanyl usage, all these things that are really attacks on the city. Is, you know, it's not so much as like, can we just get someone housed, but but we can get less people needing those services because we have a community that takes care of each other. Like, how do we get people towards self-sufficiency overall, right? Not just kind of living in this kind of cycle of being stuck with the things that are barriers in their lives or troubling them or causing these things to happen. So I'm kind of curious moving forward, like, I don't know if we're not going to solve that today, but I'd like to know how we could figure out how to utilize volunteer services or put our heads together to figure out, I don't know if we have what it would cost or what this would look like to make it viable again. But you said it you said it perfectly, is governments can't do everything for you, but at a certain point, the community has to take care of each other. It's our responsibility to all engage. We're all stakeholders in Clackamas County. But I don't know, Martha, what do you think? I think there's something there like that fits our core values.
I wouldn't be adverse to working with you at looking at something. I think we have to be conscious, though, of the budget constraints we face. I'm not as worried about the courthouse because I think we're going to be able to manage that. And we had to do something, John, because the other one was going to fall into the river, and polling showed that there was no way people were going to we bonded with these buildings. And so part of the money that we'll be using is when these bonds are retired. For these two buildings, it'll be allocated towards that. Plus, hopefully, we won't have any what I call black swan events, maybe, but, you know, and so we'll have some stability in our revenues coming in because we're a very high-growth county right now. So there are, in that sense, I'd like to get you the information of the underlying assumptions of why we moved ahead with a P3 model. And it's a model. P3 model is a model that's been used by higher education for years. And we're about the third or fourth courthouse in the United States that uses this model to do it. But I do think there's a place, and I'm digressing, I know, but I do think there's a place for the volunteer piece. I think that we would have to see where it lands, who would run it. Do we just provide a space for it somewhere, or do we, because I think, Gary, it was someone who was actually hired to run the program, right, who was managing it.
There were county staff.
There was county staff. So we'd have to figure that piece out as well. But the other observation I'll have to make is that when you were the head, you were very external as a director and innovative. When you left, we kind of lost that momentum. Because my observation with social services now, and I'm not talking about our housing folks, but it seems to be more internal. It seems to be more driven by metrics from the state and the county rather than maybe looking at some innovation ways to do things differently. And I don't know how to change that culture. And like I said, I'm not talking about the folks that are working in housing. That's largely our housing authority and Fahid brought up. They've been probably the most innovative duo that I've seen in the last few years, but they're the ones pulling all that community work together. Maybe we talk to them and see if we can work with them to do something. But it just went from your external way to bring people together, and really, the social services just doesn't seem to want to do as much. They do their job, but it's not involving the outreach to community work that used to have a lot of energy. And that's just my observation after being here for a while. You provided that space
Well, I
when you
just-
were a director, quite frankly, is how I saw it, but anyway.
Well, I just want to thank you for those kind words,
No.
and I don't in any way mean to criticize the
No, I'm
existing
not.
leadership.
No.
But again, things are different, times have changed, but I would be happy to work with the commissioners on anything that they would like to do around this issue. The consolidation under the Aging Disability Resource Connections is giving a different construct to the number of volunteer programs. There's not the word volunteer in that program. And so I think the visibility will suffer. But I think one of the things my boss, my late boss, told me one time is that he compared me to the mental health director who said he had to have everything lined up before he acted. And I would act and figure out a way to make it work over time. So maybe I wasn't the most cautious director at that, but again, I was out there however I could be.
Well, we're kindred spirits that way. I've gotten into trouble with Gary more than once. Remember No Mo May? Gary, I got hauled into his office. But we are innovators, and yeah. And why don't we?
Yeah, I'm open to committing to get to work right away with they're just like, I don't know, get some pencil and paper out and get our noggins together and figure out what we can do to it. It's just essential if we're ever going to get less people homeless and less people in this cycle of despair that the community engages. The recovery-oriented system of care is very much about all of us stakeholders engaging. That's business, that's neighbors, that's faith communities, that's a lot more Johns, to be frank, right? What you said is in complete alignment with the recovery-oriented system of care to be successful. So we talk about it all the time, but what you're asking us to do really is the action behind that with the community engagement. We have lots of other examples how we've tried to do that, but this, I mean, you've seen this be successful. Now, the truth is not everybody's John, and unfortunately, right, in the community, and not everybody had that special factor that helped grow that kind of desire in people to engage back. And so we have to figure that piece out, but I'm totally willing to work with Commissioner Schrader and maybe with some staff to see if there's a pathway and how we could come to terms. But
Excellent.
yeah, it's a really valid point that you're making.
We'll try to do it without impacting.
Commissioners, you should meet with Mr. Mullen directly and come up with a plan, and then you share it with
That's
staff
what
after
we-
that.
Yeah, and I try not to impact the budget at all. I really do, because I know that's a huge thing, but once in a while, you gotta let us fly free, Gary. Come up with some innovation.
You don't report to me, Commissioners, I report to you.
I trust
Let's
your.
see what we can do.
I trust your judgment.
I don't
Leave it
know if,
that way.
Here, can we at least we have all see what we can get on the schedule? Can we see if we can get the schedule with the three of them?
We'll coordinate the meeting, yes.
Perfect.
Let's do it.
If you indulge me, one quick story that I'm happy to share with you is how I came about the way I do the work, and I've done the work, is that I was a 10-year-old kid living in New York. I grew up Irish Catholic, and the name Kennedy was whispered here and there. And on the day he was inaugurated, it was a snow day in New York, and we were off from school. So at 10 years old, I wanted to go out and play in the snow, but I kept coming back in to see when Kennedy was going to speak. And, when he said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country," is the kind of inspiring words that the commissioners could utilize in your work with the communities as you go out. Say, yes, the county is a partner, and we're doing really important things, but we need your support, we need your energy, we need your commitment to make things work here in the county.
Right, let's do it. Let's do it. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, John, for being here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the indulgence of a little extra time.
You
3
bet.
minutes is a little hard to squeeze everything in.
No problem, thank you.
Nice to see you, John.
Okay, I'll check with Tony to see if we have any other in-person testimony?
I do not have any blue cards at this time, Chair.
Okay, well, I think I'll turn it over to you for any Zoom presence.
Before we begin, I would like to remind you, if you would like to testify, please use the raise hand feature, and I will call on you in the order received. I will begin with Arnie Werman. Please state your name and area of residence. You will have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Arnie Werman. I am a resident of Lake Oswego. And Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, thank you for allowing me to address you. I simply wanted to address the commission in support of the budget of Clerk Catherine McMullen and specifically the elections office. I worked the election this past couple of weeks for the primary, and it was an exhilarating and wonderful experience. And it also was something that took incredible amounts of management, coordination, and resources. And I have lived in other states and worked elections in other states. And I felt very strongly that this one was done very, very well. I understand that due to reductions in recording fees and other real estate associated fees, that the budget's been hurt, and for the first time in a while, we're looking for money from the general fund. I strongly urge the commission to support it and go forward with it as requested. I think the real estate market will return before too long, and this should not have to be a long-term solution. And if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll shut up and leave.
Thank you very much. It appears that we have no questions for you, but we appreciate your participation this evening. Thank you.
If you would like to testify, please use the raise hand feature, and I will call on you in the order received. Mr. Chair, I do not have any hands raised.
Okay,
Apologies, Chair, I have 1 hand raised.
okay.
I will begin with Rick Cook. Please state your name and area of residence. You will have 3 minutes.
Yeah, my name is Rick Cook. I live out in Stafford. First off, I want to thank you all for the work you're doing. It's incredible the amount of time and effort you put forward, and this is everybody in the community. And I know there's even some of the citizens that are even taking time away from their work to put onto this. If you want, I just want to talk about tab 13, pages 48 through 50 and code enforcement. For those of you who may not know me, and I've been a Hamlet rep on the C4 Clackamas County Coordinating Committee. I've been on CCI for a number of years. I was the former chair of Stafford Hamlet, so know the area fairly well. And I think that the thing about code enforcement, and I understand the particular restraints that are put on everybody, but close to half Clackamas County residents live in unincorporated areas, and the CPOs, the community planning organizations, #1 issue by overwhelming numbers is code enforcement process. It's very frustrating when you have numerous areas that it's hard to see, and noticing the numbers of caseload for the code enforcement officers is overwhelming. So once again, this is not directed at staff or any of the public electives, but just to kind of give you an example of there was a recent article in the paper about, I guess it was the Mount Hood Center out in Damascus. It took 7 years to close that thing down, which is something that should have happened before that. In a smaller one is Lusher Farm. They've been doing things over there for, oh gosh, probably 20 years that haven't reached code standards. And I want to give shout outs to Jennifer Hughes and to Joy Fields, who have kind of taken that project on and is working with the City of Lake Oswego, and hopefully that will be handled soon too. But that's another thing that's taken over 20 years to get online. So recent ZDO discussions and some changes, for example, the ADUs that the board passed and I think I was EDO 285 maybe, and then also 288, which is the utilities changes. Those are without doubt going to have impact on the staff of code enforcement. And I guess my question would be is, it's tough to ask them to do more when they're probably underfunded, understaffed, which I understand that's, you can talk to most of the departments out there and they're all going to feel that. But so I believe it was the county assessor mentioned today that a lot of times you feel, I know the commissioners feel that sometimes they get from the state handed down some unfunded mandates. Well, those two ZDO things are almost to the point where they could conceivably be unfunded mandate, because I don't know how you're going to go out and permit and check those ADUs to be sure that we're not going to put somebody in danger with that. So once again, I appreciate all the work you're doing, and just wanted you to know that, okay, I'm going to say this, Martha, but I planted my tomato plants, but there's no tomatoes
Chance
coming
to
your
throw
way.
at us, yeah.
So,
Rick and I have known each other for a long time, and you're a great pal. Yeah, and, yeah, thanks for not throwing tomatoes at us tonight. I appreciate it. And Gary, we didn't do any cuts in code enforcement, though, that I know of, isn't that?
No, you did not.
Not, okay. It's just the fact that it's a chronic problem.
They certainly could use more staffing like anyone
Everybody
else,
can,
so they
yeah.
could-
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Rick, for your testimony. We appreciate your involvement.
thank you and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Tony, do we have any other testimony via Zoom?
Mr. Chair, that is the end of my list, and I do not have anyone else on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. I will now close the public comment portion of this meeting. I want to thank you all for your participation and your comments. It means a lot and it counts. So thank you very much. Does this committee have any further discussion about the proposed budget? Okay. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry, Commissioner Scholl.
Chair Karn, I was just going to say that I would ask all the members of the Budget Committee tonight to take a few minutes to go over some motions that you might want to consider tomorrow for deliberation. This is your last chance to give those things some consideration.
Thank you, Commissioner Scholl. Any other comments? Seeing no further discussion and no other business before this committee, we are recessed, and this committee will reconvene tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. for further deliberation. Thank you.